Nigel, I was making the point to Alt Mehmet from Migration Watch earlier that I remember standing on a harbour side in Greece in 2015 when all around me the mainstream media was saying here are the huddled masses trailing their way from Syria and they must be welcomed in. They're all in the same basket. And I was watching a gaggle of young men with smiles on their wreathed in smiles, jumping into these lovely waters of the Mediterranean, actually having quite a good time. And I would never have said that then. But what I'm trying to say is people have different motives, people have different crossings, some of them seemingly quite safe, others meet with tragedy. But what's wrong is to present it as a one-size-fits-all problem because it's different according to where you come from and how you do it and who you are.
Of course. I mean, there was a yacht that crossed the channel on Saturday, came into the river at Rye Harbour, went up on the bank, 20 people disappeared. They've been hunted down, most of them, there's still 4 on the run. Now, that was clearly a very, very expensive, highly organised, and I would guess it was people trying to get people into Britain to join criminal gangs. On the other hand, you clearly have got people who've left Iran, for argument's sake, who are Christians, and it's a deeply intolerant country. So you're right, there is no absolute one rule as to who these people are. What we can say is that 90% are young men. What we can say is that virtually none of them have any documentation whatsoever. And what we can say is that if this year's estimates of 60, 70, 80,000, whatever it's going to be, we can say that's a huge insult to those who legally come to the United Kingdom and go through a lengthy and quite expensive process. And I would also say that this does pose this country a genuine security risk. A large number of undocumented males is not good news. And you know, before Partygate caused this Prime Minister all these problems, actually, in the red wall seats in the north of England, people who voted Brexit thought they were voting to take back control of our borders. And with the Channel, it's not happening.
Ella Whelan, 60, 70,000 people coming across the Channel this year. That's one projection, says Nigel. The truth is, we won't. I don't think we'll know, will we? Because the Home Office has said they're going to stop publishing the figures. Do you deplore that move if that's what's happening?
Yeah, I think it's not a non-controversial position to say that the Home Office has most certainly not got a handle on either controlling borders or the immigration system at large. Priti Patel has tried to kind of grandstand, not so recently about instituting a new harsher immigration system, and then now ridiculous suggestions of, whether it's creating wave machines, bringing back boats, stuff that doesn't address the complicated picture of either it is asylum or immigration, the nature of, the rules that we have in place, how many people can come, under what circumstances. I'm not so sure I'm so upset that it's males. I don't know whether if it was women it would be any different. I kind of deplore the distinction between good migrants and bad migrants, and that really actually I think a lot of liberal discussion about migration is that you're only a good migrant if you're kind of on your hands and knees, not having fun at Lampedusa, kind of crying for a position. I think that actually a more humane and enlightened approach to immigration would talk about the fact that there is a lot of space in this country. There is indeed, as we've just had discussions over the last few months about the need for drivers, the need for labourers, the need for a lot of staff, for example, in the NHS, that there's certainly the space for people, that we're not a kind of a tight country fighting over land. I think that if we throw open an approach to a more liberal immigration system, then we don't risk people dying or indeed people taking the mickey coming in.
But there are two slightly separate points here. I mean, one is the numbers coming in across the Channel. The other is the broader question of what's happened through legal immigration as well. I mean, British population's risen by 8 million since the year 2000. It's a stunning figure, and 84% of that is directly down to immigration. Now, you can talk about workers, but equally, people need houses to live in, they need hospitals to go and be treated in, their kids need to go to primary schools. I mean, we've had an unplanned population explosion through having an open borders policy. And you say we're not that densely packed. Well, actually, apart from the Netherlands, we are the most densely populated country in the whole of Europe. And if you just look at our roads, equally, our quality of life is diminishing as our cities and towns become busier.
take the point, but I think that's very different from saying we're densely packed is very different from saying that we're sort of all falling off the edge. There is a question for British politicians to address the fact of scarcity of resources with housing, not just for immigrants, for everyone. We know that the ability to get a house and a job is important.
I don't think you dispute. I don't dispute Nigel's figure of 8 million since 2000. Maybe you do, but let's assume it's a given. What would be a more suitable figure, or it just is what it is, right? But I mean, is that too much?
I can't put a figure on it, but I think that we're in a unique moment politically, and Nigel mentioned Iran, where you have Western forces now in relation to Ukraine, but indeed more recently in relation to Afghanistan, meddling in parts of the world which will create an increase in migration. There's a moral question in that in terms of the West's responsibility for the problems it causes. But also I think as you move to a more, and I would like to see a more internationalist approach outside of the European Union of celebrating immigration as a good in and of itself. The idea that you travel to different places, make different lives for yourselves, become citizens of different nations, that to me is entirely attractive. People like to talk about it in relation to Erasmus. Why it shouldn't just be for middle-class students.
Well, we're doing that anyway, aren't we? We've replaced Erasmus. We've got an even better scheme. And look, this is not wanting to control your borders and have sensible limits on numbers.
But I want working-class male Europeans to be able to come over and get jobs as well as universities.
They will be able to, but if we go on with net migration running at 300,000 a year, we are putting intolerable pressures on public services in Britain. And that's all I've ever argued.